Okay, we're getting ready to change the ball joints, brake pads, and tie rod ends on the MR2. Things you're going to need: jack stand, jack, bunch of sockets, metric, breaker bar, a couple of pliers, a puller, pickle fork, anti-seize, hammer, torque wrench, and of course some new ball joints. So let's get started. Alright, first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to loosen all of your lug nuts while the car's on the ground. Then you're going to want to jack up the car under one of the jack points. They're located underneath here where the metal is tripled up. You always want to make sure you use a jack point when you're jacking it so you don't bend some random part on the car. Then you always want to throw a jack stand under there, because you never know if one of your jacks is ever going to fail. You don't want to be underneath the car in case the jack fails. Next up, you're going to remove all of your lug nuts and take the wheel off. Set that down right there for a nice seat to sit on. In order to remove off the brake caliper, there's a bolt right here. There's a bolt down here on the bottom that you need to take off. I believe they are 17mm. When you're getting that last bolt out, you got to make sure you hold on to your brake caliper because you don't want it to go anywhere. Also want to make sure that your parking brake isn't on, or this will not come off. Just kind of wiggle and jiggle it, and that'll come right off of there. Now you can't let this sit on the brake line because it'll rip it eventually. So you want to make sure you hold this up with something, a piece of wire, bungee cord, doesn't really matter as long as there's no stress on your brake line. Good. Beautiful, and this will just slide right off. Make sure you don't get any grease on your rotor. Hold it by the edges and set that aside. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is pull out this old beat up cotter pin. Use that, some wire cutters, twist that around and break that off of there. You gotta take that big nut off. It's a 19mm. Alright, that piece is gonna end up being garbage. I'm gonna take the 17mm and we're gonna loosen these guys right here. Once you get those out, put them in your little metal holder because you're gonna keep those. Now I like to take the ball joint off over on the vise there, so I'm going to take this whole arm off, which requires me to take off this nut. If you have a small press, you can just do it right on the car. So this is a 24mm. Just going to slap the breaker bar right on that. Loosen her right up. Next up, it's a bolt way in here that we're going to have to take off. Alright, this bolt, 19mm also. I'm going to wrench on it. There we go. When I did that, my ball joint right here fell right off the car. Okay, now this may or may not go to plan, but you gotta bang the ball joint out, which is seated in there, really tightly. First thing I'm gonna do is use a pickle fork, stick it down there, try to loosen it up a little bit. Seems like that's about all it's gonna do. Alright, next up we're gonna try the puller. So after using the pickle fork, I'm gonna put a 2-jaw puller on there. Now this one here is a bit big, and the jaws don't clamp down enough, so I got my special pry tool. Oh, look at that. We're just going to stick that in there. That's basically going to make the puller small enough that you can grab on there. You can rent a puller at any auto supply store for free. And when you get ready to tighten it, make sure there's nothing in front, because sometimes these will shoot out quite a distance, and it can be fairly dangerous. There it goes. Woohoo! Now we got the old one out. We're ready to install our new one. Goes in just like that. I'm going to put the special nut they give you on there. Now whenever you're working on a car, you should always print out all of your torque settings that you're going to be using. That way when you go to put it back together, you know what everything is supposed to be. Some bolts it doesn't matter, but some bolts, like a ball joint, is pretty critical. Alright, so once you hand tighten this, you're going to set your torque wrench to 73 foot-pounds for the rear ball joint on an MR2. Oh, there we go. She's all torqued down already. Next up, you're going to install a cotter pin. You're going to put that right through this little hole, just like that. Grab your pliers, bend it around, and then snip that one off. We're ready to put it back on the car. Next step will be to reinstall this the same way that we took it out. I always like to put anti-seize on all the bolts. This one's got some on it from last time. Scoop it on there. Makes taking your vehicle apart much easier in the future. And you will curse people that don't put anti-seize on their vehicles when they're as old as ours. Got them all snug, time to torque them down. This back one here is going to be 83. These bottom guys here are also 83. And last but not least, one back here, that one's a little more, that one's 98. There we go. Back end is now almost done. Now, as long as I'm in here, I'm going to be changing out these pads, which are my race pads for the track, with some OEM street pads. You're going to need yourself the Magic Brake Cube. It's got these little points on it, and you'll see what that's for in a second. Brake pads just simply snap out on both sides. We'll set them aside. Got these little metal clips in there, and you might have some other clips. Most of mine I've removed. They just get to be in the way and are a pain in the butt. And all they do is keep the brake from squeaking, and mine don't seem to squeak. Now I'm going to take the OEM ones and install those. But before you do, there's a piston inside here, right there. Alright, and that piston's got two little V's cut into it, and you have to spin that back down. That's for the parking brake. Make sure the parking brake is off for this. So you're going to figure out which side of this lines up best with the hole, and you're going to use these little points here, and you're going to stick those in the V. There we go. How far do you put it in? Until you get tired of frickin' turning it. Now when you're done, you got to make sure this is vertical. So one of those has to point up and one has to point down, because those are going to align with this little bump right there on your brake pad. So I either have to turn that more or I have to loosen it again. We're going to see if we can get another half a turn out of it. There we go. I don't know if you can see in there, but one of them is pointing up, one's pointing down. All you got to do is reinstall your brake pads. So take this guy here, I'm going to stick these little tabs in there. Piece of cake.